the Village of Cornwall Police Department responded to a serious assault that occurred on Paula Court in the Village of Cornwall. Chief Dixon contacted the New York State Police, and we began a joint investigation from that point. At approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, the perpetrator of this assault turned himself in. Investigation has determined that Jonathan Rizzo, 20 years old, was involved in a dispute with an acquaintance of his. That dispute ultimately led to a serious assault where Mr. Rizzo removed a folding knife, stabbed the victim in excess of 20 times. The victim also received a fractured right hand and a fractured skull. The victim was taken to St. Luke's, where he currently remains with non-life-threatening injuries. Mr. Rizzo was arrested for assault first. He was transported to SP Montgomery, where the investigation continued. He was subsequently taken to be arraigned, Town Justice Francis Navarra, and he was remanded on $50,000 bail to Orange County Jail. Take some questions.
What did you say the name of the street was for the attack? We were there yesterday. It was Idlewild.
The-
Where the blood was on the side.
The 911 call, the Village of Cornwall responded to Paula Court. The investigation determined that the actual assault occurred on Idlewild Park Drive.
Okay, so the road that you said prior, was it Idlewild? I just didn't understand what you
The
said.
the Village of Cornwall responded to Paula Court as a result of the 911 call. The investigation determined that the assault occurred on Idlewild.
Got it, okay. Can you talk about the relationship between the two men? We had gotten word that Mr. Rizzo was an ex of a female who was present at the time of the attack.
The victim and Mr. Rizzo were personal acquaintances. That's the relationship that they had.
Was there a female there at the time? One of the witnesses reported hearing a woman screaming.
There were no females involved in the assault, no.
Was there a female present at the time of the attack? Or
Fem-
was it just the two of them?
It was the two of them solely involved in a dispute. That dispute ended up with the serious assault. There was no female involved.
So there wasn't a woman with them at the time, whether she was involved or not?
Was anyone in the home when this happened? Were they by themselves?
It did not occur inside of a home.
Was anyone in the vicinity when it happened, or were they alone?
Chief?
There were no witnesses that observed the actual action that happened on Idlewild. No witnesses came forward. Based on the time of the day, it was in early morning hours. The streets were pretty quiet.
Does it have anything to do with the bar down the street from where the attack took place?
No, there's been no information pertaining to had any relation to do with the Trestle Bar at all.
Okay.
And this occurred outside.
This occurred outside.
Do we have any idea what the motive was for the attack, what the argument was about?
It was a personal dispute between acquaintances. The actual nature of why they were fighting is not yet been determined.
Can you speak to the idea that he stabbed someone 20 times? That's more than just a personal dispute. That's like some real passion there. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, what motivates somebody to, it's not just a simple stab, that's more, right?
Obviously, no one knows what goes through the mind of somebody who is stabbing somebody 20 times. For whatever reason, obviously there's some serious rage involved. All we do know is that there was stab wounds in excess of 20, and the victim also suffered a fractured skull and a fractured right hand.
How were the fractures sustained? Was there also a beating involved?
We believe the fractures occurred as a result of the stabbings.
Can you announce release the victim's name?
The victim's name is not being released at this time.
Why?
There's no reason to release the victim's name at this time. It's
About age?
21,
And both from Cornwall and Hudson?
both from Cornwall, Hudson.
The suspect was actually from the town of Cornwall, and the victim was from Cornwall and Hudson.
To your knowledge, how common is something like this in a town like Cornwall?
Chief?
Cornwall and Hudson is a bedroom community with a very low crime rate. So obviously something of this magnitude stands out. But I've been chief there for 4 years, and nothing like this has happened during my time there.
Does Rizzo have any priors, or can you tell us a little about who he is?
From what I understand, through the early investigation, I believe he did have a past DWI arrest. Other than that, I don't believe he has any other past record.
Can you help? I'm sorry.
Is he a student somewhere? Does he work?
I don't know what his employment or his, if he's a student anywhere. I'm not sure.
What about the victim? What can you tell us about the victim that, aside from not disclosing their name?
The victim is a 21-year-old male who suffered serious injuries as a result of an individual who
Is he a
stabbed him in
student
excess of 20
anywhere?
times.
Student or?
I believe he works in the commercial food industry.
Now, the fact that he used a pocket knife, that probably would save his life, I would imagine, to do something bigger, 20 stab wounds, he would be around it.
Well, how the victim didn't die is, a miracle. Whether or not it was the size of the knife or, exactly how, he miraculously survived.
Can you talk about the timeline prior to the attacks, or what were these two individuals doing outside at 2:30 in the morning? Had they been arguing, a few blocks before the attack actually happened, or was the victim, accosted?
No, I believe they had been in contact with one another during the course of the day. I guess initially they were just involved in a regular conversation. Like I said, they are acquaintances.
And then it escalated?
Yes.
Any drugs involved, as far as you know?
Nothing reported. There was no drugs recovered. We don't believe anything was affiliated involving drugs.
They're acquaintances. In what way are they acquainted? Or they're not friends, I guess, necessarily, but how they know each other?
Well, generally, we refer to them as acquaintances because they did know each other. They were together prior to the assault. They weren't strangers. This isn't a per-chance meeting that occurred that eventually ended up in an assault. They were together. They were acquaintances. They had been together for a number of hours, and then eventually the relationship went sour and caused the demise of one of the victims to get stabbed 20 times.